Welcome back to the Sell Like You podcast. And you may notice I'm in a slightly different location with a real human in real life. JBJ, welcome.
Hello.
We've stolen your thank you for letting me take over your studio.
I came from so far away to make this happen.
Yeah. So we've taken over your studio. We've just done a podcast on you, and I've been in a room over there with full of lights and teleprompters and people making me feel like a rock star.
Makeup everywhere.
Makeup. You even have a bit of makeup.
I have a bit of it. You're not allowed to see it, but it is there. Yeah.
It's definitely there, yeah, and it was mine. So like I know the color tone was right. We did a good job. I'm just outing you on the makeup.
Life is hard sometimes, and you have to bite the bullet. Boys, if you're in a studio, makeup's just coming for you.
Yeah, it is. So. Nobody needs that shiny glow.
It didn't help.
So thank you for coming on. I feel like it's been a real great few days, and then we've just done a podcast, and I've been on Sales Gravy before, and now I'm on the Sales Gravy University. For those, I guess, really, because I'm coming from my listeners tend to be, in Australia or the UK. We are, growing into the US market. But for those that don't know, like, who are you and what is Sales Gravy?
Who am I? We're asking the big questions in life. Well, for the Australian audience, you'll have no idea who I am. Yeah. Unless you've read like Fanatical Prospecting, for example, or Sales EQ, or any book by Jeb Blount. I am not Jeb Blount. I'm Jeb Blount Junior, so I'm taller and I'm better looking. But I am the marketing director at Sales Gravy, and I've been in professional B2B sales my entire career. I started selling when I was 15 or 16 years old, whatever I can legally say is when in the United States. And I've been making cold calls to professional businesses since I was in high school. Transitioned out. The reason that I think I'm on your podcast is because I'm the host of the Sales Gravy podcast, which is the world's, and I apologize, I'm going to brag on your podcast, like the world's longest running sales podcast. We've been podcasting since 2006. Not me, I was a kid, but now I am the main host, and it's the #1 downloaded sales podcast of all time. So
I did not know that.
You're in good company. I think.
Really am. I'm going to cut that bit out. We don't want people listening, so that'd be like, off we go.
Yeah. No, but it's we are part of that pantheon of sales podcasts, and I think that if I was going to introduce myself to the American audience, I am an American. To the Australian audiences, I sound American, I present American, but I'm Australian at heart. I am totally into surfing and jet skis if I'm in Perth, and going to the bush, whatever it is that Australians do, I'm totally into. Unless it's bad, then I'm not into it.
Yeah.
And
golf, that's actually
golf,
pretty big.
Yes.
But we have lots of kangaroos hopping across the golf course.
We are members at the Wollongong golf course, which is, I believe, in Melbourne or around somewhere in that area. I'm not exactly sure where it is because I'm not good.
It's on the eastern state, so it's Melbourne or Sydney.
Whatever works for you. I'm not good at the Australian geography yet, but I will become great at it. And so I think that one of the reasons people bring me on is I have an expertise in like the top of funnel sales cycle. So prospecting has been something I have done and I've honed, and this is the skill that is most important for later on in your sales career to be able to grow your own pipeline. And then at the same time, I accelerated my sales career, one, because I had a very nice leg up in that my father has written 17 books on sales, and by osmosis, I learned a few of the tricks and strategies, and then I was mentored by some really great people when I was growing up. But I didn't want to be a salesperson. Like I went to university, and I was totally out of sales. Like I was going to be a teacher, teach English. We talked on our podcast, or Sales Gravy podcast, about my fascination with writing. Turns out you can't make very much money in teaching in America, so I decided to change my career path and went to journalism. Turns out still can't make very much money in journalism unless you get to a big, firm, which they hire out of like Harvard and Penn State, UPenn and Princeton, and some of these like really prestigious universities, which I did not attend. And then halfway through that, I got a political science degree. I started that. And then I also transitioned into an economics degree in college, which have served me none since I've left college. But I
think many people could also agree with that. I did it.
I have the papers. I actually have 2 papers. So if anybody wants one, I'll send it to you. You can have my degree, whatever. Yeah. But I started at a marketing internship when I was 18 or something. And I was like, well, it's not sales, but I can make money, so I'll get into marketing.
Yeah.
And I was moving papers back and forth between an office and another office, and it was just a like terrible internship for me at that point. And then I learned that they weren't filling up these luncheon things, and they would bring old. So I was selling to. It was a continuous care retirement facility, which is essentially a place where older people, high net worth older people in the United States, would sell their assets and then move into this facility that has like homes and apartments, and then they would essentially be the last place they live. So they would be like have full care all the way to the end of their life. These are 2 million plus net worth individuals. And I was like, I think I was 19 actually. And I just started on an Excel sheet using fanatical prospecting and just calling people and saying like, hey, I've got this luncheon. What do you want to do? And they're like, do you want to come in for this thing? And I filled up like 6 months worth of these luncheons in about 6 weeks. They all came in. And then because there were so many people in the office, which is like a little small office, that they started letting me do site tours of like where this place was going to be. It wasn't even built yet. Like we were getting the first revenue to actually break ground on this thing. Wow. And they would let me go do these site visits with these people who were asking about it because I was the intern and they didn't have anybody else to do it. And the salespeople were busy, talking to people. So I would take these people out, and it turns out that I didn't know what to say to them because they were like 80 and I was 19, and they were talking about 401ks and their assets and, their illnesses and their grandchildren and their children's children or whatever. And I would just deer in headlights, didn't know what to say. So I said nothing, and they just kept talking because they didn't care. They didn't care if I was listening. They just wanted someone to talk to. And because I was there, And we'd get back to the place, and like, I'm genuinely interested in people, much like we talked about in our podcast. But, for y'all listening, like I'm talking a lot, but I love listening to people. And at the end of it, they would walk in and they would go, I want to sign up. And I had a conversion rate of like 80%. I mean, it was like ridiculously high, to the point where I had ended up being directly responsible for $5 million in revenue in like a very short period of time. They gave me a Starbucks gift card, so I quit. And
for how much?
$25, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like 2 drinks back then.
Wow.
And I don't even like Starbucks, so it didn't really help me out. I gave it to my buddy. And so that transitioned me into like business to business sales. I got an internship at a place called Paycom, which turned into a full-time role as a senior account executive right out of college. They're paying me a ridiculous amount of money to, I don't know why they hired me, but they did. And I was the #1 intern in the country there. And then I was the #1 sales rep young sales rep in the country, for like 6 weeks. I had sold the most revenue in the entire country, in the entire company, which at like 22 was pretty ridiculous. It was over, $2 million in revenue in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And then COVID hit, and I was just sitting in an apartment. I didn't really like that, with like 3 other dudes and 3 dudes in an apartment in the South. So we're in Augusta, Georgia, which is where the Masters is, if you're familiar with golf. But it was in Atlanta, which I know Australia's hot, but like, I don't know, man. Y'all got to come to the South. It is hot. It's like Singapore. Like, think Singapore hot. Like, just like completely wet. And it was hot in that apartment. There's 3 guys, and it was a field sales role, and all the doors shut. And I just was not happy. So I came back to Sales Gravy. Had a few other sales jobs. I was the #1 sales person in the country for Comcast Business, it's a big telecom company here in the United States, like the biggest telecom company here in the United States. And so I really just sort of fell in love with like sales, and I got really good at it. But as we talked on the last podcast, so you should go listen to the Sales Gravy podcast, we keep mentioning it, is that, it didn't necessarily make me happy, but it did give me a lot of experience. So hopefully I can bring some of that to this podcast.
Yeah.
That's a long story.
It is a long story. But it's so interesting because I didn't know all of that. So now I've got a bit more insight. So I'm going to pick into that.
Okay.
So you're obviously, you've got all these books. And I mean, I reference fanatical prospecting quite a lot because I don't know if you noticed, but when I read the book, I said to my friend, I was like, this book's written about me. Like, this is written about me. I don't know how Jeb knows me, but this book has been written about me. And so, but I think it's the traits of a fanatical prospector. And so you've got your spreadsheet, you're young and you're out there and you're not really looking at going into sales, which I would love to hear from a salesperson that was like, 17, I'm going to go in sales, I'm going to kill it. I don't know if they exist. Maybe now they will because of all the, I guess everything we're putting out there around what sales is and who they are, or who salespeople are. But I think that within that then, so you've got your spreadsheet and your fanatical prospecting book, and away you go. How was the pressure for you being Jeb Blount Junior?
I think it's like a unique situation in that, like, I am the son of somebody who has quite a lot of, I would say, impact on a particular industry. So he's not famous. I wouldn't say that most people, 99% of the world, and more than that, 99.99% of the world doesn't know who he is. But of the industry, like in sales, people do know him. And so, going into like a Paycom, for example, they all have gotten Fanatical Prospecting as a book. And a lot of companies, when I go talk to them, like they have Fanatical Prospecting sitting on their desks. And so, yes, when it comes to the pressure, there was a lot, I think, to perform, to be as good as he was, or good as he is, to be honest with you, and be the star in any situation. Like I had to be the star. And that pressure is probably not real. I don't think that anybody actually thinks those things now that I'm older and have had space to kind of work through some of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, when I went to these different companies to work, I had a chip on my shoulder, which was, I'm going to prove to you whether, and now we were talking about like, sales and my journey and everything kind of off the air for a minute. Did I like sales until recently? Not really. But the reason I think that was is because I took that chip with me and I was just going to push myself to the nth degree to prove to others that I was worthy of the name that I carry, because I'm a junior. So like I have the same name as him even. And that chip took me a really long way, but it doesn't serve me so much anymore. And I think long term it doesn't serve me. So the pressure now versus the pressure then is very different. The pressure today is I want to uphold the brand. I want to be my own Jeb Blount, and make sure that I have integrity in everything that I do. And that chip on my shoulder made me kind of, I would say, less empathetic, more rushed, too eager to solve things too fast, and less thoughtful. And that chip just, I think it built me, but then I realized it started to tear me down. So too much of anything is too much of a good thing is a bad thing, and that chip was a good thing until it was a bad thing. And so now the pressure is quite different. I also mentioned to you, before the podcast, I have 2 children, and that changes the big picture. So while I wanted this even admiration and support from people who knew him, I mostly wanted it from him, because he's the big dog. Like he's the guy who wrote all the books. I wanted him to say, son, you've done a great job at doing what I wrote. And, I was waiting for that day to come. And, what I've realized now with having children is like, that was totally self-inflicted. And then not only was it self-inflicted, it was impacting others because of how it affected me. So yes, there is pressure, but I've learned how to manage it.
And do you find, like when people talk about couples learning something together and actually I'm keen to know, because you learned golf because your wife was into it. And I don't know about you, but there's no way I could learn off my husband. If he was trying to teach me how to do something, I think I'd kill him. So, maybe you can answer the golf question first about learning from your wife. But does the same thing apply when you're learning from somebody so close to you? Is it like, I know I don't need to know this from you, or give me a break?
I know. So if Jeb is listening, Jeb, if you're listening, I know the answer is yes, and I don't learn from you, because I'm not any different than any other kid. Like, I mean, I have children. They don't listen to me, and is the best that I try. Like, they don't listen to me, and sometimes they do. Yeah. So it's not all lost, but like they do listen to me.
Sometimes they listen.
Sometimes they don't. Most of the time they don't. And I was definitely the same way. And I think that chip also. I think along with, being a young man in a testosterone-driven industry drove me to have a big ego and a big pride. I think more ego, like less ego, more pride. In that, like when he tried to tell me things, or teach me things, or he was just talking like we were on this podcast, I would roll my eyes, and like behind the scenes it just was not as smooth of learning. Now the issue is that like I learned everything from him, so like in the end I did learn all of those things from him. I had all those conversations, whether or not I wanted to listen. The knowledge went in my head, and I would be like 2 days later and go like, I should probably try that, whatever. But I would grumble about it, and it would work, and that kind of thing. Now, was I as receptive to the learning, and did I learn as much as I could have? No, I didn't, and I'm still working through that. Like I'm still understanding how to sort of get over that kind of child father like thing. And I work when I work with sales clients, like it's the same in industries, like the VP of sales training their sales team. I call it the parent effect. Like we come in and say the same thing that their VP of sales has been preaching on the mountaintop for years, and suddenly they're like, "That's a good idea,"
because you said it, not them.
Yeah.
So I use the exact same analogy, so that's why I'm smiling, because it's so true. But do you know what? So then I call the next bit that I'm the fun aunt. So I'm fun Aunt Harriet, and I come in and I say all the things that your parents told you. Don't do this, do this, but I say it from the fun aunt way, and therefore they're like, yes, everything you say. And so that's how I always describe that. You go into a sales team, and the VPs or the head of is then say, oh, I just need them to do this, and then you go in, say it in a different word, in a different style, in a different way, different person, and you're in.
It's really strange how that phenomenon works. Like my mother and I are very close, and so she can teach me things much more easily than Jeb can. And I don't know exactly like what the specific reason is, but it just is that way. But like with my wife, so my wife, Ashley Blount, she runs our operations and training operations department in our accounts division of Sales Gravy. So she's like a massive part of this organization. And she, I'm gonna say this first. I'm gonna get myself in trouble. I can learn from her, I think, more easily than she can learn from me. And I don't know exactly why that is. And I think it might be actually that I've looked at those two things, like how Jeb and I go about teaching people. We teach for business-to-business salespeople. We teach these large rooms. Like I can get up. When I was 19, I got up on stage in front of 10,000 people. Like it just is in me. Like I black out when I get on stage. It just, people have like speaking anxiety. I don't have speaking anxiety. I have like one-on-one anxiety. Like one person is way scarier to me than 10,000 people.
Yeah.
And so the way that I teach is that like keynote style, like very intense, and I'm like dogmatic about things, and like I just have that energy about it. And Jeb is very much the same way, because I'm cut from the same cloth as him, and I sound exactly like him. So if you listen to any of his content, I sound just like him. People think I'm him all the time on the phone. And Ashley, I don't think learns that way. And so when I start teaching that way, it doesn't hit as well, especially in a one-on-one scenario. She teaches in a different way. So she's a figure skater, not only at golf, but she's a figure skater. Wow. And I don't like ice because there's no friction. It doesn't make sense to me. What the hell are you doing out on ice? It makes no sense. Why are you on blades? That's crazy. So she does. She's beautiful. She's a beautiful figure skater, and she can teach me how to skate. And you know what? I think I listened to her because in that realm, I'm just completely out of my depth. Like I have no authority there. And golf was kind of the same way. Like I never picked up a set of golf clubs until I was 23 years old. And when we first started dating, because she would go out to the golf course on a weekend and I wanted to hang out with my girlfriend, but I didn't want to go golfing, and like she was going either way. So I bought this cheap set and started playing, and I'm still terrible, but I was terrible. And she taught me the game of golf, but I was willing to listen because I was way out of my depth. And I think that, with sales specifically, that it's not that I'm not out of my depth. I'm constantly out of my depth with sales. It's like the game of golf, completely confounding. Never figure it out. Your swing will never be perfect. You'll never hit the right shot. The putt will never go in the hole. Like you just, until it does, and then you're like, oh my god, and then it doesn't do it for 15 more holes. So with sales, there's a lot of soft skills, and I think that pride and ego in human beings has a way of getting in the way of saying, like, if you can do it, I can do it. And talking isn't that hard. And, being charismatic isn't that hard. And all of those things that we say to us, like, well, I mean, why is Harriet the top of the game, and like, why are you the one to look at? I'm sure there's somebody on LinkedIn watching your profile and was like, man, I hate her, right? I'm sure there's not. Well, and maybe it's not me. It's not me for sure. I absolutely is not me. But like, you have those people and you don't know that they're there, and they're judging you. But I think that's mostly an internal judgment. But they see a reflection of themselves in you, and they don't like that for whatever reason, or they think that they can't do that for whatever reason, and they just kind of poo-poo whatever you do. But I do find that in these soft skills areas, training salespeople all over the world and doing this with thousands and thousands of salespeople every single quarter, that it's definitely a challenge of ego and pride. Like, if I can get myself out of that space, I listen a lot better. But it is definitely hard for me to listen to others in this particular space because I don't feel out of my depth, even though I might be. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Like I can do this. Why are you talking to me? Like, I'm gonna do it this way. And even the lifelong learners, like even the people who say they're lifelong learners and listen to everyone, like no one's perfect. I've come across people who have read every single book and they still won't listen. And that's just human nature.
But the thing I picked, like the thing that I've never thought about it from this way, but you've just explained it, and I don't know if you've just done this for me. But you were saying before about learning golf and learning to figure skate. You're right down at the bottom, so you know nothing. You're like Bambi on ice. Yeah. You're chunking. You're getting chunks of grass out of the ground, which is how I play golf. And all of that. So when somebody goes to teach you, there's no further down you can go. So sorry.
Well, I mean,
I'm just taking.
I can hit the ice pretty hard, but yeah, you're right.
There's no further down you can go. So in that moment, you've got nothing to lose because you're barely standing up. You're barely hit the ball one every 10 if you're lucky. So you've got nothing to lose. But when you get to the point, and this is, I'm thinking about clients in my head, when you then get to a point where you've hit a few numbers, you're making target, you're making some commission, that's probably for people that are not lifelong, that maybe they might say they are, but they're really not. That would be quite a difficult place to learn from because you're thinking, why are you here? I'm doing all right, I'm doing this, and I'm just going to keep doing it, and I'll just keep getting better. And I come in or you come in and we give a different perspective maybe on how to outbound or how to position a phone call versus an email. And they're going to potentially look at what we're giving them and say, well, I'm kind of doing all right on mine, and I don't know if I really trust or like your approach. I'm just going to keep doing mine. Yeah. But for them, they've got a lot to lose because they could go down a few rungs, but they could go up a few.
Yeah, that last bit, like they could go down a few rungs, is primarily why and I'm not even going to say anybody else, why I have a hard time learning in that space. Like when I got to a golf equilibrium, like I chunked the ground a million times, and then suddenly I figured out how to like hit the ball. It didn't go the right direction, but I was hitting it. And then
click.
When somebody went to go teach me, I was like, well, I've already figured out how to hit the ball. Like, I'm just going to keep doing this, and eventually it'll work out. And golf is such a great analogy for business and sales, unfortunately, because people don't like golf, but I like to talk about golf. And, what you've illustrated is that it's not that people aren't willing to learn, is that they're not willing to risk learning something else. Yeah. And relearning and, maybe going back to the bottom and then figuring it out, or they think they're going to have to go back to the bottom when really they could change. Like, and we know this in outbound. If you change one thing for like 3 weeks and then did one thing again for 3 weeks, and eventually in 6 months, you've changed your entire process, but you are so much more successful. Yeah. You don't have to change everything, just one little thing.
One tiny thing. So really interesting. I've just got a new guy that's joined. He listens to the podcast, so he's definitely going to be listening. And he's come from Ireland. And so I always call it like fresh blood coming into WA because otherwise we just have lots of people that live in WA and they grew up in WA. And so when we get someone from outside of the state, I get very excited because I'm an outsider, so I get to come in and
do you all like go to their house and like hound them? You're like, oh, we're here.
I'm like, welcome. I'm still at the border, like, welcome in. But what happens is we get a breath of fresh air, as I call it, and that's not to say that everybody else isn't, but we get this new point, and I experienced it because I came to Australia. I was Dan, and I came to Australia like, wow, it's really hot here, and I enter a market. I've got zero connections on LinkedIn in the area. I don't know anybody. I don't know how business works. I don't know if people are going to be open to a coffee. I don't know whether cold calls work here. So you kind of go into that space. And very interestingly for him, he was an SDR moving up into a BDR, so business development, and before moving into almost like an AE, an executive account executive, and then or a BDM. And so he's opted to take he'd been given this new role, went traveling, landed in Perth, and then applied for the role that I put out. And he's opted for almost applying for a role that's slightly below where really he left off only a few months ago, because he's looking at it from a perspective of, if I can come in at this level, I can ramp up really quickly and earn my stripes and get where I need to be as quickly as I want to, really. And I get to prove myself while doing it, whilst also giving myself a bit of leeway, in the industry and in the network. And he's proven that, the way he's been, I think he's maybe 7 weeks in. And he's killing it. He's doing a fantastic job. He's coming to New Zealand with me for a new client that we've just won. And so there's lots of opportunity for him. But if he'd come in and tried to go in at this top role, the chances are I wouldn't have interviewed him, because we weren't hiring for that position. But now I'm already like, move into that position, because I can already see where it's going.
Yeah.
So we had a roadmap for the first couple of months, but then he's then trying to get roles that people don't know him. He hasn't got a name. There's no real kind of cadence behind him. So it's very unusual to see that, though, as well, to see somebody come in and be okay to take a step back. And I think it relates back to a lot of, and I don't know if you listen to the Diary of a CEO podcast, Stephen Bartlett, that he's got the head of failure. And I heard somebody talking about it on a podcast the other day. And they said that, could you imagine that job be like, you would be so depressed at the end of it, because it would just be like everything you're doing is leading you to failure at the end of the day. And so, but I think what it tells us is that failure is okay. And, I mentioned to you before I think maybe on your podcast, or when we were chatting before about owning a day spa. And for me, the worst case scenario was that I'd lose some money. If I set it up and it didn't work, well, then at least I tried. At least I had a go, because otherwise you'll never learn. You'll never go to that next level, because you never knew it was possible. And so you mentioned before, you've done the sales bit, you tried, you were like, I'm going to be a journalist, I'm going to be a teacher, I'm going to do all these things. And now you're marketing, which I have to ask about, because marketing for me, so the way I describe marketing, and you're going to hate me for this.
It's okay. I'm a salesperson in marketing.
Yeah, I was going to say, marketing is like the gateway drug to sales.
Right.
Okay. Because
and I went the other way around.
You went the other way around. So you went sales into marketing, which I don't know anyone that's done that. But I think it's such a smart idea a smart move, because when I think about all the things that fall down in sales, is that there's no alignment back with marketing. So you've gone from this sales position and learning from one of the best and having all this exposure, and then you've moved. What was why what got you in there?
Part of that was that I had I think my affinity for sales ran its course. And not in like that I don't like sales in general. I mean, I like selling. There's parts of sales that totally fill my bucket. Like the client interactions, the sales process, the prospecting, not so much, but I like doing it to the win. I don't like doing it to the loss. But I like the sales process. I like to understand the customer, and I love the win. But I kind of realized that when I closed deals, I didn't really feel better. Like I never felt good after closing, because it just was like, okay, on to the next thing. Like on to the next sale, on to the next sale, on to the next sale. I could never give myself pause and say like, congratulations for a sale, no matter how big or how small. In fact, I mostly thought, why isn't it bigger? Like that was mostly my attitude around sales. And so, for me personally, not writ large, it just wasn't filling my bucket enough. And when I looked at Sales Gravy, and one of the main challenges that we've had at Sales Gravy is very little marketing, in terms of very little marketing direction, strategy. And we are a really, really big brand in the space, but our marketing is not so great. And so I wanted to take what I learned through sales, which is understanding your ideal customer profile, and not just like the things you write down on a sheet, but like when you go talk to people, what do they look and sound like and feel like? And I have that knowledge. When it comes to leads, okay, if I'm lead generating, this should go to a sales team to prospect to, where I've worked in industries and worked in sales teams, and like we didn't get through my whole past, but I've worked in sales teams where like the leads were leads and marketing kind of handled them and they were nurtured, and like I never as a salesperson ever really saw them. Like they just didn't really come to me, and it wasn't brought to our attention to cold call, like these are warm calls actually, but call these lists that were being built. And Sales Gravy builds incredible lists. I mean, we have hundreds of thousands of people in our CRM, and we bring in thousands of people every single month. And what I really love about that is like I can bring all of those in with great content, with great marketing, with nurturing and lead funnels, and we use HubSpot, understanding HubSpot and all of that strategy. And marketing is a huge piece of business strategy. Like it's a part of a business that I have never understood before. And it's broader than like sales is very myopic. Like I'm going to do this, grow revenue. I'm going to call these people. It's math, it's all just math, and then empathy in between, and then closing the deal, and then math, that's what sales is. And I didn't have like the chops to grow a sales organization. I mean, I'm still young. I didn't have the experience that Jeb necessarily had with his 40 years in business. Like he just has lots and lots of experience there. And, the sales team has a seller that is really experienced on our team. And I wasn't going to usurp like a role suddenly. Like they were doing much better than I was in that role actually. And I stepped into marketing because look, I can take all of the knowledge I know about sales, and I'm really knowledgeable about sales. Now, execution-wise, I just haven't had enough runway to like really prove that I'm the million, double, triple million, billion-dollar earner in like a really large business. I've proven that I can sell. So like Paycom, I was really, really successful. At Comcast Business, I was really, really successful. At another company that sold out of Y Combinator, they were like a seed round startup. Like I was so successful at the organization. So I know that I can sell, and I proved that to myself. And I think that chip went away because I proved it. And then I went into marketing, and look, I still make cold calls. Like when we bring in leads, well, they're not cold calls. They're warm calls, to be honest with each other. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to misspeak, but I will make those calls. Like I will sit down with my marketing team, and I get my marketers at a table. We do a role play in the morning. And then at 9 a.m., we are making 30 calls each, because I want them to know what we teach, like what we do and how to do it. And I'm teaching them to be sellers while we're marketers.
So you get marketers to pick up the phone?
Yes.
Are you sure they're not salespeople?
Yes, I am absolutely sure they're not salespeople. I think that they didn't enjoy it until they got the wins. Because the high that you get from like someone who says yes on a warm call or whatever, you have a prospecting call, and then you get that yes, you're like, wait, really?
Did you say yes?
Are you sure? And so I got this team to seek the win, and these are warm. Like they know our brand.
Service calls. We can
They're not customer service calls.
We can sugarcoat them.
No, I'm going to defend them. They're not customer service calls. These people have not bought from us before, but they are warmer.
Yeah.
And having a good business conversation, sales is a great way to learn business, and marketers typically aren't in the position to like actually go talk to other people and the customers unless they're doing interviews later on, or like they're doing customer stories or whatever those are. But what I know is that, and what you know, and what people listening to this podcast know, is that sellers are the best at understanding business because they have to understand somebody else's business. They have to understand what questions to ask, how to be a business mind, not just a salesperson. And the marketers that I'm working with and I have on my team are learning in these calls. Are like, oh, I didn't know that, and what questions should I ask? And I get in this conversation. Oh, that's an interesting thing that I didn't know that they did that, and they're learning that like business is so much deeper than a lead funnel with a piece of content that has an email to it, and that we're trying to just get them to click on things and then eventually book a meet. Like that part of business is important, and it's worth knowing and how to execute and actually do it well, because brand means everything. But at the end of the day, I am teaching these people how to run a business where you have to pick up the phone. Marketing's great until it's not, because you can pay a bunch of money for marketers and a bunch of money for marketing, and if it doesn't convert into any kind of revenue, you've wasted your entire time, your entire day, your entire year, your entire business. You could just pick your money up for the spa without, any kind of like real sales or whatever, and I'm just using a spa example, and just throw it in the trash and burn it, and it would have been a better investment.
Yeah.
So, why I stepped into marketing, to go back to that original question, is I think that my skill set and my knowledge base and, the history that I have in sales allows me to build a marketing team that's maybe not different than that's ever been done. I'm sure it's been done a million times before me, but it's different than I've ever seen. And that on the ground, really gritty marketing team that is, we're both the sales, we're MDRs or whatever you want to call them. We're SDRs or BDRs. We're account executives. Like, I sell as well. I mean, leads that come to the sales team, like, they sometimes get put on my plate, and I'm bringing in my team because I want them to see how it's sold. And I want them to see me fail, and I want them to see me fuck up. Sorry if I can say that. Fuck up a question and get that sweatiness and like fluster, not know what to say, and move too fast and be too eager, and all the things that I haven't worked out as someone who's younger in the profession. But I want them to see me do that, and then I want them to see me post-mortem it, and then the next call get better, like be better than that, and they're excited. They leave calls, they're like, I think I could do this. I think I have a content contributor. You're a content contributor. And we have a content specialist. Her name is Christina. She's wonderful. I really love working with her on my team. So much fun to have in my hip pocket all the time. She's going to be here tomorrow, so we'll get to meet her.
Oh, great.
She walked away from, we are selling podcast advertising now. And she walked away from a full cycle deal and closed it. And it was a small deal, very small, but it was her first deal she's ever closed, never been in sales, ever in her entire career. She walked away from that, and I said, do you think you could handle more of these? And she, without hesitation, went, yeah, I could do this. And that was such a elation, or I don't know what the word is, or the verb, but like, I was elated. There we go. I was so elated that I knew the exact emotion she was feeling. It was just like that lift in your chest of like, I did it. And for me, that feeling went away. Like, that feeling of like, I did it, got old. It just didn't speak to me anymore. I couldn't find it whenever I closed a deal. I just was like, I had more anxiety because I closed a deal, and now I've got to go find another one. I had just more of that happening to me. And when I watched her close that deal, it gave me so much more energy that I wanted to go do it again. And so that's why I went into marketing. But now I think I might go back to sales. So everyone else, watch out. I think I'll do both.
Watch out, might be coming back. We're taking somebody's chair.
I think I'm going to do both of these things at the same time. Yeah.
But I think, though, like you say, you want to do something different. And I think that it definitely is doing something different. And I think it's a great difference, a great differentiator for what you're building. Because, like you say, a content, somebody that supports content, somebody that's supporting marketing. I work with clients where we build out blitz days where the entire organization gets on the phone. So from accounts, reception, you name it, they're on the phone. And I don't know whether they particularly love it, but they know that quarter day comes and we are all in this together. And there's food in, and there's definitely a big drink, drinks later to celebrate and take the mick out of who did what. But I think there's a realness to what you said, is that you get to see people do it for real, because I do cold calls in front of my clients all the time. And, especially if somebody's hesitating, I will say, can I do it? They will look at me like I've got 4 heads. And sure. And I'm like, okay, cool. What am I saying? Because, I might have only been there for an hour. And so, I'm getting my head across, what are they doing? And then what happens if this person says yes? And now I've got to figure out what their systems are. But we'll figure it out. And so, you get on the phone, and what I love to see is if somebody hangs up on me, or if somebody brushes me off, or if I fumble and then afterwards I go, oh, guys, what should I have just said there? Because I know in myself that wasn't the right thing to do. But what it shows is we're not robots.
Yeah.
We're not, otherwise you buy an AI tool.
Yeah.
And you'd get them to do it. And many businesses are. But what it does, it removes that human point, that curiosity piece of, wow, so, tell me, how do you do that? And what does that look like? So I love that you're looking at things differently from that marketing perspective. Now, you mentioned before about HubSpot. Love HubSpot. It's a great tool. What other tools are you using? You mentioned one before about your inbox.
Yeah.
What's that one called?
Yeah, it's a quick rundown of tools. I mean, I don't know if these are specific to sales, so forgive me. But yes, HubSpot is a huge tool for us. I mean, that's everything from CRM to marketing and social media and all of that. So won't deep dive into HubSpot. If you want to know more about HubSpot, they have a huge website. They're a massive company. You can go talk to them.
I think everyone is there.
I use for my email, like I love, so when I was in school, I'm gonna get to my tools, I promise. When I was in school, I studied economics, and one of the first things we went through was this process of efficiency. And so what the professor did was he, had us go through a exercise where we had one person, we had a group of 4, and we had one person doing one particular job to create like this whole thing. So like 4 people had a job and we were all working together and how fast it got done. And then we did the exercise where like one person had one job, but another person had 2 jobs and the other 2 people didn't have anything. And like, how fast could you get it done? And if one person had the entire job, how fast would it get done? And like, obviously more people with like a little bit of broken up, like creates efficiency. And at that point, a light bulb went off in my head and I was like, I love efficiency. I want efficiency in conversations. I want efficiency in my life. I want efficiency in I'm a big cook, like love cooking. So efficiency in my kitchen, like I've set up my kitchen for efficiency. It's not the nicest place, but it works really well. Like I can get things done so fast. So I love this. So my tools that I use, the first is we use Gmail as our email client. And I shout out to folk.app. They were a client of ours who sponsored the podcast a few weeks ago. Their CEO, Simo. So if you're listening, Simo, shout out to you. You sent me an email and it said, "Via Superhuman." And I was like, what is this thing? Why is it saying Via Superhuman? It's just an email. So I clicked on it, and what it is, it's like a separate email client. It ties into my Gmail, and it completely sorts my inbox. And so I have this function. It's all keystrokes. So like if I hit Command K on my Mac, so if you don't have a Mac, sorry, like Command K, and I hit like get me to 0 on my normal filtered inbox, which is just everything that gets in there that isn't important or from like someone that I've designated as a VIP, or like Google Docs, or like it like spreads out your inbox. So it's multiple tabs. And in the regular inbox, I had like 40,000 emails because I'm one of those people that like clicks on an email and then just like, if it's not important, I'm not clicking on it. And if it is important, I won't click on it until I'm going to do something about it. And then once it's clicked and I do something about it, then I move on. And I don't delete emails. I don't do anything. I know.
Do you move them into folders?
Nope.
Oh,
Nope. Sometimes I move into folders, but I know. I'm just not that kind of human. Like I don't have that capacity in me. My text messages, I have like 175 text messages that I haven't like read. So I'm so sorry if it's causing anybody anxiety. It doesn't cause me anxiety. I'm so sorry. But Superhuman splits my inbox, and I hit Command K, and there's a command that says get me to 0, and it would like sort through every email from like older than a week, and it would just get rid of them. And I am down to like 30 emails in my inbox at any given time. And that was so like freeing. And then in my important box, I can literally hit like, if it's, something that's important, but I've already completed it, or I've already opened it, or I've already responded to things, I can just hit E on my keyboard and it just like sorts it into like done. And if I want to reply, I hit Command Enter, and it opens up a reply box, and there's like an AI tool that like helps me write emails, and then I hit Command Enter again, and it's gone, and I hit E, and it's gone, and like all of these little things help me just move through my inbox, because I would spend like 20 minutes there in the morning when I didn't need to be looking at my email because I should have been making calls. And I went from like 25 minutes on my email because I would get lost, and then I would be looking at a whole bunch of stuff, to like 10 minutes. And I'm on with my day.
Yeah.
Other tools, Canva. So as far as design goes, it's really simple. We use Adobe as well, but that's for more skilled professionals. Not me. My team has Adobe skills. I don't have Adobe skills. But Canva for quick things. We use Unbounce right now for our landing pages. And I use, here's AI tools. This is what you're going to be interested in. I'm not a coder. I'm going to release our new Fanatical Prospecting website in like a couple weeks. And hopefully it's already out by the time this podcast gets out. And I didn't know where to start. We use WordPress. We've moved to Elementor, which is really nice. Web people will know what I'm talking about. But I didn't know what I wanted. Like the hardest part about me for design, or like wanting to get like even a one pager, or if I'm talking to a client, they're like, hey, can you send me a one pager? And like, we're a medium-sized business. Sometimes I don't have a one pager for that thing, but I don't know what I want it to look like. I don't know what the design looks like. I don't know what colors I'm going to be like using for this kind of thing. And what I'll use is like Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you want to do. And I use the Canvas tool within there. And I type out, I want to build a one pager on this topic. Here are the colors that I'm going to use. And can you bring me back some ideas? And it will code for you a fully functional PDF one pager that you can tweak, and you use a vibe. So it's called vibe coding, and you can literally talk to the AI, and it will create anything you want in code. Now I have to translate it to Canva.
I was gonna say, how
later
does
on,
it go?
I just open up Canva and just kind of like recreate it. You have to be proficient at Canva, but I have gotten there. But if, for example, fanaticalprospecting.com, I didn't know what I wanted from a website. I didn't know what I wanted from that. I'm just not that creative. Like, I'm just not that kind of creative mind. I write things, I don't draw things. My paintings, not good. And I went in there and I was like, I want to build a website. And I built a fully functioning website via Gemini in about a week.
Wow.
And then it got translated into Elementor, and that thing is being released. So Gemini is huge for messaging. I use all of that as well for copy, for emails, for ICPs, for strategy. So I actually have gems for I have a chief marketing officer agent that I use for like helping me work through strategy. I have a CEO agent that I built so that when I use a CMO agent, it goes and talks to the CEO agent, and I can see how far off the CMO was, because like they're not always aligned. I also have a chief sales officer agent that helps me understand what the chief sales officer would want from marketing, and I use them to see how conversations might play out based on priorities. If you want to build agents, I use ChatGPT to help me with the instructions for the agents for Gemini, and I just copy and paste and just put them in there. So those are some of the tools that I'm using.
Yeah, wow. There's have you heard of Surf, the tool that takes LinkedIn and puts it into your CRM?
I have not. I would love to know more.
Yeah, so I actually did a course on this. If you salesgravy.com.
So it's on Sales Gravy University. If you haven't,
it will be soon. But yeah, Surf is probably the latest tool I've been using, which pulls your LinkedIn contacts into your CRM, because I've always hated that LinkedIn sits on its own.
It's so hard, and you can't pull lists.
No, and so they make this beautiful list on Sales Nav, and then there's nothing you can do with it.
Sorry, I gotta cut this podcast short. I'm gonna go do this.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay, so it allows you to do that.
Yeah, it allows you to do that. So so you definitely need to look at that. And then secondly, just touching on the email thing, because I think I would say probably anyone, but we're talking about salespeople here, is that I find and I'm speaking because I am a salesperson, but I know that for us salespeople, we'll find pretty much anything to do that doesn't involve us selling, which is bonkers, okay? Because I love selling. There's nothing I would rather do. But if you want to get me on Canva creating some tiles or a one-page PDF.
What's my afternoon? Scrap it. I'll do that.
This is so important right now. And so, I'll spend a couple of hours there and, do a few menial tasks. And so will anything to get us off the phones, really. So one of the things is that I always say, and this is a bit of a side note, but one thing I always say to salespeople is never ever create email campaigns. That's not your job. That's a marketer's job. Don't ever do it. And if you're doing it today, stop doing it. And that goes for every salesperson. Just stop doing it, because bulk emails are not your thing. So we'll park that one off to the side. But then my inbox, similar to yours, is, I have folders, so I'm judging you, but I have folders and I use them. But I started using Fixer, and so I'm going to look at Superhuman, and I'll report back to my listeners.
Send me Fixer.
I will send you Fixer. So Fixer basically lives in your inbox, and it will categorize based on things I have to action, things that's an FYI, and then things that's marketing. And so it's great because it just lives in one little folder, which eventually I unsubscribe from, and then we move on with our lives. But what I found in there is that I was finding I would open the email, read the email. I've got to do something with that, but not right now, because I'm either scrolling or it's something that's going to take me a bit longer. So then I'll just leave it there. I might flag it and I'll come back to it later. And so somebody was telling me there's an actual course on this that you can go, and it's to do with efficiency in your inbox. Mm-hmm. And it talks about only touching every email once. And I think it's something I try. I hate the word try. It's something that I'm aware of. And so every time I open an email, I'm thinking I have to do something with this because I'm not allowed to come back to it again. So even if in those moments, even if I just create it as a task for me to follow up with, although I won't technically touch the email again, it's not the best use of my time. So what then the idea is, it trains you to do that. And then it creates drafts in your drafts box that will respond to those emails, and it's taken from it learning against the way you communicate to those people. So I like it as like a quick win. I had a friend that used it. She runs a marketing business, and she used it and she said, oh, but I have to keep changing the draft. And I said, yeah, I do. But sometimes it's quicker to have the idea and change the whole message than have to write everything. And it also gets me started, which I don't know if you've ever done your human design. Have you heard of human design?
Yeah, I'm not a like an innovator. Like I'm not like someone who just like comes up with an idea and like can see it.
Yeah.
I'm someone who like can hear something and then work on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and that's what a lot of people like, is not a blank page.
Yeah.
So for me, I like a non-blank page. So if I can have a draft that, even if it's a reply to your email that just says, awesome, see you tomorrow, that's something I won't reply to because it's a given. I'll see you tomorrow.
Right.
So, but then because of that, it's there. I just hit send. And that kind of closes the loop, and then now I can file that email away. So there's lots of things out there, but yeah, Surf is good, and then Fixer is the other thing that I'm finding.
Superhuman allows me to hit Command H on an email that I think that I need to respond to or look at later on, but not today, and it will send it a reminder and sort it for tomorrow at 8 a.m. And I can just keep hitting Command H until like I'm ready. Yeah, or if I think it's like not that important for like a few days, I'll like Command H next week.
Yeah. We should do like a Superhuman versus Fixer, and we just battle it out until one of them wins.
This podcast has really gotten into tech. It's gotten way off rails.
Well, tech, well, that's exactly why we're here. Okay, let's wrap this up. So what's your favorite thing to cook in the kitchen?
My favorite thing to cook in the kitchen. Okay, so I'm really nerdy, and I'm so sorry. I'm just going to have to go on a diatribe for a while. Best thing to cook on Sundays when you want to get a lot out of food, and I don't know what like vegetables and stuff are in Australia, so I'm sorry. But what I like to do is a Sunday roast, and then I don't know if you're okay. So it's Sunday roast is a whole chicken, and I season it. I brine it on Saturday. I'll do it like a dry brine. So you salt, paprika, pepper, garlic powder, anything you kind of want on it. It's 1 teaspoon of salt per pound of chicken. And then you rub it all over. I like to spatchcock it. So I like cut the breast and then get it laid out. And then you put it in your fridge for 24 hours.
Covered or uncovered?
Uncovered. So because the fridge air will like keep the skin crispy. It will allow, that's what makes it really crispy on the skin. Then you take that out. You kind of get it to room temperature. While you're doing that, get your oven to like 400, 425, 450 if you really want to like cook it. It's 20 minutes per pound, so just so you know. And then you put that into like a roasting pan, and I like to cut up like carrots and potatoes and onions are really nice for me, like sweet onions. Chunk all those, put them around, and then a little bit of olive oil on top, butter. Always have to have butter. I'm from the South, y'all. Y'all have to have some butter. Yeah. Unsalted butter. Cut the skin and put it underneath the skin, and then the added addition is you can either use chicken or beef broth. I like chicken broth. You put enough chicken broth underneath the chicken, and you should have like a thing to like hold it up off the bottom of the pan, just to the bottom of the chicken, and that keeps it moist. You put tinfoil over the top of it, which I forgot last Sunday, so I'm sorry, Ashley, my wife, but I forgot the tinfoil on top. Necessary, it will dry up. But you put it in the oven for 20 minutes per pound, and you've got a great Sunday roast. What you can get from that is not just the meal for Sunday. You can bring friends over and have chicken, but you also have shredded chicken that you can take off and use for sandwiches, use for soup. You saw me eat soup today. Yep. You can use it just for have chicken and protein. Easy to have, like really clean meat, and it tastes great because you brined it so that all that flavor's in the meat. And then those potatoes and all of that are really good. And then what you do is you take all that meat off the bone after you're done eating Sunday dinner, and then you, in a big pot, put all the carcass in, and fill it all the way up with water. Do some salt, some pepper, not pepper actually, salt, garlic powder, paprika, whatever you want, and seasoning and thyme and rosemary and that kind of stuff, like Christmas seasonings, think about that, and a bay leaf. And you get it to a boil. You get into the water above the chicken, get it to a boil, turn it back down to like a low simmer, and I don't know. And when you go to bed, take it off, and you've got your homemade chicken broth. You can strain it or through a sieve. Like that's the easiest way to do it. Gets all the impurities out, and you've got like I don't know 2 quarts of chicken broth that you can use throughout the week for cooking, for meals, for whatever. Chicken noodle soup is really easy after that. My favorite thing to cook, which is not that. Sorry. My favorite.
The cooking show's finished nearly.
This is my last one. My favorite thing to cook is a Sunday roast ramen. So Dutch oven, big Dutch oven. You get.
What's a Dutch oven?
It's like the ceramic thing that has like a lid on it that you sit on, and then you can put it in the. So that turn your oven to like 325.
I'll convert this into Celsius for everybody later.
Yep. What you want to do, and I can send you all the things. I have a cookbook. You get beef rib, short rib, from a store. Like we have Costco, but whatever store you get. Mm-hmm. Cut it up into cubes, sear it with olive oil, season it with salt and pepper, whatever you want to do. Sear it on all sides so it's deep brown. Take it out. Put in the carrots, the potatoes, the onions. Get those not the potatoes. I'm so sorry, but the carrots and the onions. Get them kind of soft, so like let them kind of saute in the pan for like 5-7 minutes, and then when that's done, all you got to do is put like chicken broth or beef broth. I like beef broth all the way in to the pot, and get some water. Like get a bunch of water almost to the top of the pot. So like do like 4 cups or 6 cups of chicken or beef broth, and then kind of the other half of water. Helps dilute the salt a little bit, and then you put in the beef. And you get that to a boil, and then you put it in the oven for like 3 or 4 hours. The longer, the better, because all that meat will just start to like fall apart. It'll be like a roast beef essentially, and all of that broth will still be there. It'll melt down. You can pull that out. Get ramen noodles. You're licking your lips. I know it sounds good.
I'm ramen so noodles. Hungry right
soft
now.
Boiled eggs.
Yeah.
So soft boiled eggs. 4 minutes of boiling the egg. Soft boil it. It's gonna be hot, so wash your fingers. Get green onions, so like scallions, green onions.
Yeah.
And you might want to get like any kind of like greens you kind of want on the outside. A little bit of sushi, like dry sushi, seaweed, sushi seaweed. Get a little bit of that, put it in there, and then put it in a bowl. And congratulations, you've got ramen.
Wow. I'm glad we're going for dinner. I'm
Yeah.
really hungry now.
Yeah, I'm really hungry too.
So you're going to finish marketing, and when we're going to go be a chef.
One day. But don't get into restaurant business. If I had any advice for anybody, the restaurant business is just not for you. If you think you can handle it, don't. It's just not for you.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that says go do it.
Yeah, it's not the same. I worked in a restaurant. I love it, but it's not. Yeah. It's not for everybody.
Okay, last question. Aside to fanatical prospecting and aside to Sales Gravy, because we already know they're fantastic resources, I also talk about them a lot. So they are,
great.
Audience already knows.
I don't have to do any marketing.
You don't have to do any marketing here. What book, what podcast do you also recommend or listen to or have enjoyed in the past?
It's hard to recommend things for a broad audience. Depends on what you want to do. For a broad people audience.
Yeah, but don't worry about the audience. What do you like? What have you really enjoyed?
I really like. So I'm a big reader. I've read probably 20 books this year.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things to read is Malcolm Gladwell books. And I love Malcolm Gladwell. Okay. He's got great books, but Blink is really, really interesting for salespeople. It's about how we process information and how we make judgments within few seconds of things. When you meet somebody, when you read something, like your first judgment is actually a really it's very accurate as opposed to thinking about things for a long time. So that's like what that book is about.
Okay.
Is that you can actually make really quick decisions and your brain's really good at it and you can trust it.
Yeah.
What that means is that you have to be careful about how you present. So to another human being, you have to be very careful about that. That first impression means a lot.
Yeah.
So I love Blink. If you like history, the revisionist history podcast that Malcolm Gladwell does is just, I would love to live inside of his brain. And then from a business perspective, like I read this book that's really great. It's called, it's by Jefferson Fisher. I think it's very popular right now. It's called Your Next Conversation. He was a lawyer, and it's just about like, it's not necessarily like stats or like very deep in terms of its particular content, but it's great lessons, great stories, things you can learn from about how to handle conversations and how to handle conflict So I really recommend that book as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for hosting me and the Sell Like You podcast. Where can people find you?
Where can people find me? My address is you can
for Sunday dinner.
For Sunday dinner. Only one person at a time. I can't handle that many people, but I'm not a restaurant. But you can find me on LinkedIn, Jeb Blount Junior. I go by JBJ. You can find me on the Sales Gravy podcast. So go listen to us on Spotify, anywhere you get your podcast. And we're on YouTube. So go to YouTube. And then salesgravy.com. I'm releasing new websites, so please don't judge it. I promise it's going to get better. And then you can also find me on my email is jbj@salesgravy.com. So if you're ever interested in having a conversation or you want to learn more about anything, always reach out to me. I may not have time in the moment, but I will always make time for somebody who has a real question that needs to be answered, and I have the knowledge for.
Amazing.
If I don't have the answer, I'll find somebody who does.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.